This Halloween, ghoul all out with Instacart. Whether you're hunting for the perfect costume, eyeing that giant bag of candy, or casting spells with eerie decor, we've got it all in one place. Download the Instacart app and get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes. Plus, enjoy $0 delivery fees on your first 3 orders. Offer valid for a limited time, minimum $10 per order, service fees, other fees, and additional terms apply. Instacart, bringing the store to your door this Halloween.
It's Saturday, the 12th of October. I'm Ciara Revens, and this was a week that saw Keir Starmer mark 100 days in office. Israel continue its push into Lebanon, the Tory leadership reach its final stage, and Florida brace for Hurricane Milton.
Grab a cup of something hot, put up your feet, and get up to speed on the 7 biggest stories of the week. This is the Standout 7 from the Smart 7.
It's news,
but not the news.
Saturday sees new Prime Minister Keir Starmer mark his first 100 days in office, but it's been anything but smooth sailing so far. Last weekend saw a major shake-up in his top team after former Chief of Staff Sue Gray resigned over tensions about her role and salary. She was replaced by election strategist Morgan McSweeney, with rumours of a long-standing power struggle between the two. It came amid ongoing scandals involving freebies accepted by high-ranking Labour Party members. Science Secretary Peter Kyle said Labour have to consider their public image even when they're following the rules.
We focus so much on the rules that what we didn't do is take what the public are thinking about what happens within the rules. So what we're trying to do is adapt to what is the expectations, because expectations of this Labour government are so much higher than they were of the previous government for understandable reasons.
Meanwhile, Tory leadership candidate Tom Tugendhat had comments of his own on Sue Gray, who became a household name in 2022 as the Partygate investigator.
To be fair to Sue, she's demonstrated that she really is an impartial civil servant. She brought down one Prime Minister who was a Conservative, and now she's working on bringing down another one who happens to be Labour.
Keir Starmer's new Chief of Staff, Morgan McSweeney, is expected to make sweeping changes to how Number 10 is run. The intention is to calm things down, cut down on the infighting between advisers, and present the new Labour government as focused on change. Defence Minister John Healey said that despite all of the press coverage of chaos, the new government has been busy and effective, and that the time was right for Sue to go.
She risked becoming a distraction from the work of change that the government must pursue. And Keir Starmer's got a strong team at Number 10, strong team in government and in Parliament. And what you've seen over the last 3 months, you'll see in the next 3 weeks.
Just because Sue Gray resigned, it doesn't mean that Labour is out of the woods, though. And Monday saw a protest over the winter fuel allowance cuts outside Parliament, organised by Unite the Union. Former Shadow Chancellor John McDonnell, who lost the Labour whip after voting against the government over the 2 child benefit caps, said he's concerned that the fuel allowance cut will cause hardship this winter.
As soon as this was introduced, I knew it was a mistake, and I couldn't believe a Labour government was doing it. And there are lots of pensioners who are saying, I worked, I've got a little pension and I'm losing out. But they're actually in poverty, so I'm worried.
There were fresh questions for Labour on Wednesday over Taylor Swift and whether or not the pop star was given special protection by the Home Secretary Yvette Cooper. It emerged that Cooper had attended the concerts along with her husband Ed Balls, but hadn't declared her ticket as it was below the required valuation. The extra security followed the terrorist threat at Swift's Vienna concert. However, at Prime Minister's question time, the Tories' temporary leader Rishi Sunak was more interested in jabbing at Keir Starmer over the Cabinet Office controversy that saw Sue Gray exit Downing Street last weekend.
The government will publish their anticipated changes to employment law. Given the weekend's events, when did the Prime Minister first become a convert to fire and rehire?
Starmer didn't seem too impressed, but it was a question on the NHS and the timeline for the Tories' promised 40 hospitals that really annoyed him.
The most visible sign of failure of the last government was the NHS. And we are going to expand the role of community pharmacists. We need much more care to be delivered in local communities to spot problems earlier.
Thursday saw the new Labour government deliver one of their manifesto promises to tackle workers' rights within the first 100 days in office. The new bill will offer protections from sexual harassment, better maternity, sick pay and unfair dismissal rights, and an obligation for employers to draw up menopause action plans. Deputy Prime Minister Angela Rayner said they've worked hard to find a balance for both workers and employers.
Our number one mission is growth, but people have to feel that. So workers need a new deal and they need pay and working conditions that's going to mean that they can have secure employment to live better lives.
Trade unions have welcomed the proposals, which could still take 2 years to implement, but the Federation of Small Businesses and Tory Shadow Business Secretary Kevin Hollinrake weren't convinced.
Business confidence is being hit significantly because of these measures, and hiring intentions will suffer as a result. So yes, there'll be more protections for people in work, but I'm particularly concerned for people who are not yet in work.
Monday saw Israel mark the anniversary of the October 7th attacks, which left nearly 1,200 people dead and saw 250 taken hostage by Palestinian militant group Hamas. Since then, more than 42,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza and over half of all homes destroyed following Israel's relentless aerial bombardment campaign. Most of Gaza's population is displaced and shortages of food and resources have triggered deadly disease outbreaks. Israel says its goal in Gaza is to destroy Hamas and free the hostages. So far, 117 have been returned. The former Iranian Vice President Massoumeh Ebektikar says the conflict began long before October 7th.
It didn't start on October 7th. It started way before. Nobody justifies civilian deaths. But when it happens at the scale that it has happened in the past year, all the nations in this region, they are legitimately defending themselves.
All across the world, politicians and leaders paid tribute to those who lost their lives in the October 7th attacks. And Joe and Jill Biden hosted a ceremony at the White House, while UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy visited a synagogue in North London to pay his respects. Speaking in Parliament, Prime Minister Keir Starmer was calling for all sides to step back from the brink and called for action on those held hostage for a full year.
The hostages must be returned immediately and unconditionally. They will always be uppermost in our minds. And I pay tribute again to the families for their incredible dignity and determination.
As Israel marked the anniversary with memorial events, the IDF launched a series of airstrikes on Lebanon, with 100 aircraft targeting over 120 sites in the space of a single hour. Meanwhile, things on the ground in Gaza remain grim, and Matthew Hollingworth from the World Food Programme was sounding the alarm about the shortage of supplies and support for those in need.
We haven't delivered and distributed any food packages to people this month, and last month we were only able to serve not even half of those we wished to serve. So the situation is seriously deteriorating.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the people of Lebanon directly on Tuesday. He said Israel had degraded Hezbollah's capabilities and has killed its leaders, including Hassan Nasrallah, his replacement and his replacement's replacement. But he also had dire warnings that unless the people of Lebanon began to free their country from the influence of Iran and Hezbollah, Israel would do the same to Lebanon as it has done to Gaza.
We've decided to do whatever is necessary to return our people safely to their homes. Israel has a right to defend itself. Israel also has a right to win, and Israel will win.
Tuesday saw Israel expand its invasion of Lebanon, with estimates putting more than 15,000 Israeli soldiers now on the ground. There were more Israeli strikes, this time on Damascus, and more warnings for people to evacuate Beirut's southern suburbs, as the Secretary General of the UN warned that Lebanon is on the brink of becoming a second Gaza. Meanwhile, the current deputy leader of Hezbollah, Naim Qassem, remained defiant.
Netanyahu can start a war, but Netanyahu cannot achieve his goals. We let them feel the pain, and we will hit the right location to achieve our goals.
US President Biden spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu by phone on Wednesday, urging him to minimise harm to civilians as Israel continued its strikes on Hezbollah targets in Beirut. Israel has shown no signs of relenting in its military push into southern Lebanon, which was condemned by Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez on Wednesday. But Thursday saw more Israeli strikes, this time on central Beirut, with at least 22 killed and over 100 wounded as the IDF targeted Hezbollah leader Rafik Safa. This week has seen increasing international pressure over Israel's new war in Lebanon, with France expressing concern that its peacekeeping troops on the ground appear to have been targeted. The UNIFIL peacekeeping force has found itself in real danger this week, and spokesperson Andrea Tanetti says the violence needs to stop.
It's not only important for the mission to be here, but it's also important at the moment for the international community to find a political and a diplomatic solution to this conflict. There is no military solution, and it's very relevant at the moment for everyone to step in.
The clock continues to tick down towards the US presidential election on November 15th, and the polls continue to show a consistent but slim lead for Kamala Harris. She spent the week on a media blitz, appearing on radio, TV, podcasts and a town hall for Spanish language broadcaster Univision. Monday saw her pop up as a guest on one of the world's most popular podcasts, Call Her Daddy, which is hosted by Alex Cooper. Cooper wanted to know about Kamala's views on Donald's exaggerated claims on abortion.
Can you imagine? He is suggesting that women in their 9th month of pregnancy are electing to have an abortion? Are you kidding? That is so outrageously inaccurate, and it's so insulting.
American presidential elections often famously have an October surprise, such as James Comey's decision to reinvestigate Hillary Clinton's emails, and the political establishment has been nervously waiting to see what his election cycle's October surprise might be. Veteran journalist Bob Woodward produced a strong contender for that title on Tuesday as he revealed his new book, just called War, that Donald Trump has an ongoing relationship with Russian President Putin. He says the two have had up to 7 calls since Trump left office, and incredibly that Trump shipped COVID tests to Putin during the pandemic. Speaking on the Howard Stern show, Kamala Harris had a fairly stark response.
Donald Trump has this desire to be a dictator. He admires strong men, and he gets played by them because he thinks that they're his friends.
The seemingly never-ending Tory leadership contest shuffled closer to its eventual conclusion this week, as on Tuesday one of the 4 remaining candidates was eliminated after voting from Tory MPs. The results were somewhat surprising as James Cleverly moved ahead of the other contenders, leaving Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch virtually tied for second place. Former Security Minister Tom Tugendhat bowed out, but Tim Montgomery of Conservative Home didn't sound too impressed by any of the candidates or their approach to politics.
We're witnessing probably an historic split on the right of British politics. The Tory party have dominated post-war British politics because the right has generally been united and the left has been divided. And the failure really to address that division is going to be a real problem.
There was another round of voting on Wednesday, and then the 2 finalists are set to go head-to-head as members get to vote. The results won't be known from that vote until November 2nd, well after Budget Day. James Cartledge, who is backing Kemi Badenoch, was optimistic on Tuesday that she could make up the ground needed and overtake Robert Jenrick for that place in the final.
It's precisely because of that one-vote gap that there really is everything to play for. After all, Tom's run a brilliant campaign, but of course 20 votes for him that now have to be reallocated, whatever else happens with other colleagues. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of frantic ringing around.
Wednesday's final round of MP voting threw up a surprise result, which saw James Cleverly, having won the Tuesday vote, being knocked out entirely, leaving Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick as the 2 candidates facing the final vote. Tory peer Baroness Worsey couldn't believe that the Tories had been left with those 2 as their final choice.
I mean, this is terrible. It's probably the biggest gift that we could have given the Labour Party in their first 100 days of governing. And I think there will be lots of people in the Labour Party celebrating and rejoicing.
Still to come on the Standout 7, the US faces down Hurricane Milton, and Rick Astley isn't going to give up.
Right after this.
Hey, true crime fans. Tired of ads interrupting your gripping investigations? Good news. With Amazon Music, you have access to the largest catalog of ad-free top podcasts included with your Prime membership. After all, ads shouldn't be the scariest thing about true crime. To start listening, download the Amazon Music app for free or go to amazon.com/ad-free true crime. That's amazon.com/ad-free true crime to catch up on the latest episodes without the ads.
Welcome back.
This week saw Florida braced for Hurricane Milton, which was due to hit on Wednesday, and according to forecasters was expected to be the worst storm to hit the state in over 100 years. US President Joe Biden cancelled plans, including a scheduled trip to Germany, as he prepared the nation for what could be a catastrophic weather event. Milton came just 2 weeks after Hurricane Helene led to disastrous floods that have affected North Carolina, where rescue operations are continuing. The National Hurricane Center warned that Tampa is directly in the hurricane's path and could face a 15-foot storm surge. President Biden was urging everyone who could to flee to safety.
I've directed this team to do everything it can to save lives and our communities, and that's being done. I've spoken to all the political leaders in the region. I've told them anything they ask for they can get, and we've got an overwhelming response from everyone from the governors of Florida up to North Carolina.
Florida came face to face with Hurricane Milton early on Thursday morning. The storm, which had been described as potentially one of the most powerful in a century, was scheduled to hit the centre of Tampa, Florida, a heavily populated area. What began as a Category 5 storm had been downgraded to a Category 3 by the time it hit land. But multiple people were killed by tornadoes even before the main storm hit, and over 3 million people were left without power. The Tropicana Stadium in Tampa Bay lost its roof to the wind, and Siesta County in Sarasota, Florida was where the storm first made landfall. NBC meteorologist Bill Carnes said the area was hit hard.
We've seen pictures of stop signs underwater. I saw one report of 10 foot of storm surge. And so when you get 10 feet of storm surge and then you have wave action on top of it, you're going to get, not just water on the first floor in places, but potentially on the second floor.
In the end, Milton didn't do as much damage as expected, and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis was sounding relieved.
What we can say is the storm was significant, but thankfully this was not the worst case scenario. The storm did weaken before landfall, and the storm surge has not been as significant overall as what was observed for Hurricane Helene.
New NATO chief Mark Rutte visited Kyiv last week to mark his first official trip since taking office. He met with Ukrainian President Zelensky to reaffirm NATO's support and discuss Zelensky's victory plan. Meanwhile, Russian troops continued advancing on Pokrovsk, a key logistics hub in eastern Ukraine this weekend. It's thought that more than 80% of the town's infrastructure has already been destroyed in Russian attacks. But Russia security expert Mark Galeotti says Moscow will soon be running low on resources.
They're losing something like 1,200 soldiers a day. So we have to recognise that the Russians are moving. They are, in their own ugly, clumsy way, adapting to the realities of this war. Frankly, there is a limit to how much they can continue to throw resources at this level into the fight.
In the meantime, though, it wasn't a good week for Ukrainian President Zelensky, who saw his much-anticipated European summit, at which he was due to present his victory plan, postponed. Joe Biden cancelled his travel plans and the event is due to be rescheduled, although there may not be time before the US election in November. Zelensky has instead embarked on a mini-European tour, heading to Berlin on Friday to meet with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. But first, he was in the UK to meet with Prime Minister Keir Starmer, alongside new NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte. Zelensky gave Starmer a preview of the victory plan.
We've been meeting all morning, going through the plan for victory, and so to have this opportunity to join up and have a trilateral meeting is very special and very important to us, so thank you very much.
The meeting didn't see any agreement on Zelensky's much hoped for goal of getting permission to use the UK Storm Shadow missiles on targets in Russia. However, NATO chief Rutte was continuing to push for more support for Ukraine.
Supporting Ukraine in this fight against Russia is crucial for our collective safety here, all over NATO territory. Because if Putin would get his way, that will mean a serious security implication for all of us in NATO.
Not many 80s pop stars still have as firm a place in the nation's hearts as Rick Astley. The former Stock Aitken and Waterman T-boy, who became a pop star, has had a remarkably long career, including playing Glastonbury in 2023. Now he's got a new book out telling the story of his life called Never, presumably a nod to his long-lasting hit Never Gonna Give You Up. And he says that one song in particular has changed his life.
That song is part of my DNA. It is part of my life. It's part of everything. It's the reason I'm sat on your couch, in truth, because it started with that. Even today, wherever we go, even in America or different places, we're in a bar in the middle of Wisconsin and I know people know that song. And that's weird.
You've been listening to The Smart 7. We'll be back tomorrow at 7 a.m. Hit that follow button and have a great day. Give us 7 minutes, we'll give you the world.
At 1-800-Flowers.com, we know that connections are at the heart of being human. Whether celebrating life's joys or comforting during tough times, 1-800-Flowers helps you express what words can't. For nearly 50 years, millions have trusted 1-800-Flowers to deliver thoughtful gifts that help create lasting bonds. Because it's more than just a gift. It's your way of showing you care. Visit 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST and connect today. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST.